Okay, we're live. It is showtime for dealing with difficult people. That is our latest launch, and that is what we're going to talk about today. So, before we get started, remember you can type comments in just below, and we'll be looking out for those. We're using StreamYard to go live here, so we are seeing comments from any place where you're watching this. And again, this is the URL in case you do want to get started with that. But I'm hoping that everybody who joins today can pitch in a little with your own stories. And I'll wait a little to ask about that until we get a couple more people on. But do note where you're from, and then we'll ask some other questions as we go through. So Sarah and I are going to talk about dealing with difficult people. So very familiar, I think, to everyone. Sarah, have you ever had to deal with a difficult person in your business?
Oh,
We're going to talk business. We're going to not talk about family members or loved ones or friends, because that's going to take us down a whole different rabbit hole. We're going to talk about business. So
mhm.
tell me, have you ever had a difficult person you had to deal with?
I had a room full of them. I used to run a pub in West London, the Duke of Sussex in Acton Green in Chiswick. So if you live in that area of London, you may know my pub, you may have walked past it. And it was a very unusual pub, as in it was a Grade 2 listed building. It was surrounded, all of the windows were huge, great sheets of glass, and it was on a corner. So you could walk past and look in and see who was in the pub. Now, what that meant was people who had partners that were drinking, who were meant to be home cooking the dinner and doing other things, would have their partners walk past and fly in and come in to say, "Oi, you should be doing this." But because the pub had like a north facing entrance and an east facing entrance, the person would spy their partner coming in one door and run out the other door. So they would chase each other round and round the pub, trying to catch them. And it was very difficult because you would have them say things like, "If you see my wife, my husband, my boyfriend, let me know." Well, you can't like look out for all of these people and say, "Heads up, gotta get home." So we had some very difficult scenarios that were exacerbated, if that's the word, simply because there was alcohol involved.
Mm,
And it can be very difficult telling somebody, "Think you've had a bit too much," because one person's too much is another person's not enough.
mhm.
So we had to develop all kinds of things like refurbishing the pub and having curtains that could be drawn so they couldn't stare in and see if their loved ones were there. And then they had to come in. But of course, the downside to that was people couldn't get out the door fast enough because they didn't know who was coming in one of the doors. So, we tried to fix it, couldn't do that. And the other issue was we got a coffee machine. And when somebody got to the bit where they were a bit staggery and a bit worse for wear, we'd sit down and say, "I think you need a cup of coffee now." And we never charged them for the coffee. We would just pour them a cup of coffee and sit it in front of them. And everybody knew that if that person was on coffee, they weren't to buy them drinks. Otherwise, I would ban the person who was buying the drinks. So they quickly got the message. If somebody was on coffee, they were on coffee for a good reason. And that person would then just sip their coffee, or they would go home and there would be no trouble or no stress. But it took a while to put these processes in place because you're kind of expecting people to be difficult, but you're never quite sure what difficult you're going to get.
Yeah. Yeah. So difficult, and also difficult is different for everybody.
Yes.
So, and not everyone's going to have to deal with that kind of situation, but you have to think about your business and whether you can deal with it at all. Because if you are not committed to dealing with any of these situations, then that's not always the right business for you at all,
No,
which is a
and it can be
whole separate
very
thing.
tough. Yes.
Yeah.
So,
But that's one where you had a whole nother element involved with the alcohol and stuff, but also
yes.
expectations, in your
Mm,
business. So like for me, when I was in consulting and actually dealing with corporations and training and development departments, or as they call it, talent development now, the clients just had certain expectations of consultants that were a bit unreasonable, let's say.
mm,
So I would have to deal with situations where they expected me to just be available 24/7 for phone
mhm,
calls, for meetings, no regard to whether I had a life or kids or a vacation. You're not allowed to take vacation. That just was not
mm.
acceptable as a consultant. So I found it really difficult to deal with that. And that was their expectations of me, but also there's a certain amount of training involved of your client to avoid the difficult situations in the first place. But then you have other things like getting thrown under the bus in the middle of a meeting.
Gosh, yes.
You ever
Yes, I
had that?
remember those days.
Yeah, that you are as the consultant, you're basically there as the fall guy for the client in those situations in corporations. So, to protect their position, you're the one at fault. And that's always so frustrating to deal with. And what else? You've had people who just burst out into tears on the phone, haven't you? I
Well,
think I've
not
had
me.
the odd
Kevin
time that's
has.
happened. Oh, yeah?
Yeah, Kevin has. Because Kevin's very different personality-wise than I am. He's quite gentle, and I'm me, noisy me. And Kevin's quite calm and very placid, and he could be a seething ball of rage, but you would never know it. He is just so chill and zen. And he'll have a call with one particular client, and they would get very upset and start crying. And he didn't know what to do, because if he was there in real life, he would make them a cup of tea, pat their hand, give them a biscuit, and it would be different. But on Zoom, you don't get to pat somebody's hand. You can't make them a cup of tea and give them a moment of privacy. And he's like, "Oh, just turn your camera and mic off for a moment," and there'd be, "No, don't do that, don't do that." And he's like, "Oh, okay." So he had some very difficult times, and I would like to say there was one thing he done that stopped that, but what stopped that was she got it out of her system. And sometimes, as hard as it is to be that person, that's what somebody needs, is to get it out of their system to stop being difficult. They just don't realize you're not the appropriate person for that kind of situation. And I think that probably also falls into the category of difficult family members, that they say something or do something, but you're not the appropriate person to deal with whatever their issue is.
Yeah, that's
Mm,
true. And that happens a lot with customer service, customer support, who are also often the fall guy for anything, the
yes.
first line of defense. But let's step back for a second, because, like you're pointing out, everybody has different sorts of difficult people, which is really difficult situations you have to deal with in your business and how you react to them.
Mm.
So can we just jump into a few of the slides, let's say,
I
from the
think we should.
course
We
and go
haven't
through
opened
that?
with slides for a long time, not since you got me addicted to the cheat sheet.
Actually, I'm going to open just the graphics. All
Oh,
right.
the graphics.
So
Yes.
I'm going to hide this, but for anyone who's coming back and watching this, make sure you write in a difficult situation you've had to deal with what you would call a difficult person. I know I've been difficult. in a lot of situations without even realizing it until it's pointed out. I don't mean to be difficult, but then when it's pointed out, I'm like, oh yeah, I didn't mean to do it that way or to be that way. Maybe I should act a little differently next time. So
I
if you don't even point it out to someone in a nice way.
I think we all have the potential to be difficult. You know, my daughter, my youngest one, I would tell you that she was difficult. But what she actually is very good at asserting her boundaries and saying, that's it, that's enough. And, you know, I don't think in hindsight she's actually been difficult at all. She's just, this is my boundaries, this is the bit that you don't cross. We're done here now, I'm moving on. And when you come across somebody that forthright and that honest, it can throw you and you decide that they're difficult. And actually, they're not the difficult person. You're just reacting to them.
Yeah, there's actually a good slide in here. Let me
We
share
can't
this
see the screen, so
I'm going to open it up now.
Oh,
So
wonderful.
this is just the sale. That's just the sales page. So I'll go back
I like
to
that. Managing challenging situations in your business without losing your core.
Here, actually, let me go over to, so when you get all the materials in the course, in the student materials, so that you get student, instructor, and lead generation materials, right? In the student materials, there's a course book, an action guide, there's the cheat sheet, which is your outline, but there's also this folder that I think a lot of people kind of gloss over, don't really notice. It's the graphics. And what this is just the graphics from the slides and the course book. So I'm going to open that up because we also give it to you in PowerPoint, but in this sort of PNG. And you can actually walk through a lot of the course if you know it in enough detail just by looking at these slides, which have opened up on the wrong monitor. There we go. So I'm going to go through a few of them, not all of them, just to talk about some of the things in the course, and we can go back and forth on this a little. So this is the overview of the course. This is what we call always the course, the success roadmap. And the success roadmap in dealing with difficult people is, one, you need to actually identify what behaviors you find difficult and why. So do you have trouble dealing with tears? Does it not faze you at all? You have trouble dealing with somebody who's complaining all the time or not at all? You know, what is it that makes it difficult for you? What sort of situations are causing that? So you have to examine yourself as well, which remind me later to talk about the launch bonus because it's a self-assessment. So I'll go back to that later. But then there are some key skills you can use to handle a difficult situation. Some of it is just preventing it from happening in the first place. And there are things you can do in your business to make sure you're set up to avoid some of those difficult situations. And there are also things you need to have in your own mindset that will help prevent you from thinking of them as difficult at all, as the people being difficult. So kind of the things you were saying, how you enter the situation and what your mindset is. And then there's a 7-step process you can go through. It sounds initially like it's just for in-person situations, one-on-one, when you're actually live dealing with a situation, but it also works for those sorts of situations where, say, something's happened and you're just can't stand dealing with this person anymore who's so demanding of you and is never happy, and you need to do something about that. So that's a difficult situation, a difficult person, but you're not in the moment. So I'll give an overview of that too. And then there's 2 different types of particularly emotional situations you might have to deal with. One has to do with aggression. So that happens, that's for sure. You get the odd person who gets aggressive and angry. I know customer service people anyone who deals with customers directly has to deal with this periodically, someone who's working them towards a rage. So that goes through some of those phases that lead up to rage and how you can de-escalate it. And then there's other emotional situations like tears, like you were saying, Sarah, somebody bursting into tears. So you can see I'm just using one slide, one graphic to just give an overview of the course, kind of demoing that without using the main course slides at all. Which, by the way, as another aside, not to get off track, but Sarah and I are doing a new challenge for getting your course online. It's going to be 5 days instead of 10 days. And we're going to focus on using the minimum materials so you can get it on really quickly. And this is actually a good example of just using minimum materials. Mm-hmm. So a few examples of situations you might have are in here, like customers who are angrily demanding refunds, or team members who don't do what's asked of them repeatedly, and you get more and more frustrated. Suppliers who are always late with deliveries, clients who don't read the small print, who don't know what they've paid for and go on to complain and want more and more. Customers who can change their minds about buying after saying they'll buy. Social media followers who post negative comments about your business, or how about crashing a conversation and being a troll. That happens too. I'm sure you can relate to all of them. And anybody, please write down what comments you have if you've had to deal with any of these.
Nettie's shared one with us, if you can see that. And I know that's happened with me and you, Sharon. You'll say to me, "Where's them emails?" And I'll say, "I've done them." And you say, "No, they haven't. They're not there." And what we worked out was I'd left them open on my computer, and Sharon had gone in and opened up, which erased them on my computer and then erased them on Sharon's. So we were in a position where the working structure that we were doing wasn't saving the emails that were being created. But once we worked it out, and the good thing about that was we didn't try and work it out over WhatsApp or text. We got on a call and went through the process step by step to discover I was leaving a window open that I should have closed. Now, if Sharon hadn't got on that call with me, she would be, "You haven't done this." And I'd be, "I have done this." And it would be, "No, you haven't." And I'd be, "I've done them. I've done," right? The swiftest way to resolve that before it escalated was, "Show me what you did." And then as we worked out, we've never had the problem since, because I know as soon as I do the emails, I save them and I shut that tab and come out of the system completely so that Sharon can see them. So even though that you can see we get on like a house on fire 99% of the time, we still had that moment, just like you, Nettie, when someone says, "You haven't done that." And I know exactly how you feel with the lack of confidence and the second guessing. But Sharon was very professional and says, "Let's walk through this step by step." And that was it, sorted. Once we understood what the issue was, it's never happened again.
And it's also, I totally forgot about that situation. Totally forgot, because to me, it's like, it was no big deal. It's, "Oh, we'll sort this out, no problem."
But it could have become a big deal. It could have become something that had been horrible for the both of us.
We've had communication problems just cross-culturally, where you said one thing, I took it a different way, and vice versa.
Say, "Money earner," and
Wilston while. No, that's a different story. That's not being difficult. But
and last week, Sharon banned me from a word. I wasn't allowed to use "utilize." And you know when somebody bans you from a word, it's the only word in your brain.
I think it was whilst as well.
Whilst.
Which in the US, whilst.
Not whilst.
But you say whilst. No, you say whilst. I'm telling you, you do. You say whilst.
See, what have you done, Nettie? You've set us off.
Have you done those emails yet? I'm still waiting for those emails. You're like, "But the deadline is next week, not this week." Anyway, so Nettie said, when someone tells you you haven't done something, you know you have, but they make you lack the confidence and second guess yourself. And actually, sometimes it's true. Like I say I've done something, but I haven't actually done it. But I know exactly what you mean, where you know you've done it, but it's just some sort of lack of communication in there, and it's a confidence issue too. So I totally get that. Um, and Sherry's here as well. Sup, ladies? We're talking difficult people, Cherie. And I finally got your name right again, Cherie. I don't know why it's Shari in my head, because that's what my parents used to always call me, is Shari. So that's what's in my head. Good to see you here. And I gotta laugh. So Nettie said, "Whilst you deliberate."
Whilst. It's whilst, not whilst.
Okay, we are going to be testing you, and now I'm going to be distracted the whole time. Whilst
we're deliberating, we'll utilise all of the slides.
We are going to utilize these slides. So those are some examples. Add your own examples too, because everyone can relate to them. It's absolutely everybody can relate. So where's the next slide? Here we go. And the types of how you feel when you have to deal with those situations. Some of those things. So like Nettie, you said you get a lack of confidence and start second guessing yourself, like feeling it's your fault, feeling powerless, excluded, manipulated, definitely out of control, alone if you're the only one having to deal with it. So there are a lot of feelings that these situations bring up. Now, this one's an interesting slide because this is around what your customers expect of you and how that affects whether there's a difficult situation in the first place. So, and this can apply to team members, employees, vendors, all that sort of thing. What they expect of you is going to make an impact on whether you come up with these situations at all. So typically, these are some of the things they expect: honesty, promises kept, value for money. I don't think anyone can argue with this. Dealing with something when it goes wrong, prompt service, respect. These are all common things that anyone expects. And you expect from them as well, but they don't always know that. So we talked a little bit about, before we got on this call, Sarah and I were talking about how some of this can be avoided in onboarding, which we don't talk about in this course because we have a separate course on onboarding. But some of these things can be dealt with that way, a difficult situation. And Sarah, I can kind of hear myself out of your speakers, by the way.
Oh, can you?
Yeah,
I'll mute myself.
There are 4 different elements here that we also talk about in the course that all converge to cause a difficult situation. So there's you, right? Your own hang-ups or attitudes, mindset, behaviors, all of that. There's the other person, there's the environment, and then there's the situation itself. And those all come together to cause a difficult situation in there. So there's the environment, the actual what's going on, what you're bringing to it, them. And that's something go into in the course as well. But you have certain attitudes and mindset that you need to develop in dealing with any of this, especially in business, that are going to help you deal with the situation. So responsibility, just being responsible for delivering on things that you promised, having a positive attitude, taking ownership of the situation, and honesty and respect. I'm not going to go into all the detail on that. This is an interesting one as well that we talk about in the course, which is having a statement of intent for your business so that you can get into that mindset when you're dealing with customers in particular. We do focus on customers in the course, but it can be tweaked for others. So here are just some examples of intent. From every customer interaction we have, we need to do what we can to send the customer away happy, to show how much we care for them, to maintain our reputation, enhance our brand, ensure they'll come back again. All these different things can be the intent for your business, which is actually an interesting one that's related to our other course on From Values to Profit, which would be a nice combination with this course as well, come to think of it, because your core values can impact how you interact in a difficult situation. And this is the 7-step process in the course, which I mentioned earlier sounds like it's mainly for a one-to-one situation, but it can be used also in those ones where you're just over text, not just talking, but also, you've come away from a situation where you got a support ticket, or you've just been having to deal with a client who's been difficult on and on and on. How are you going to work it out? You can use this particular system, staying calm. You might vent to your partner who's in the other room for a little while first to help you remain
yes.
calm. Don't be defensive. That goes along the mindset. Listen. So the listening, there's some tips in the course as well on listening. I think, there's some in here. If you're face to face, don't plan your response while you're speaking. So there are various things in there, but then you might have to ask questions if it's not a live situation. Ask questions in a non-defensive way to try and get to the root of the problem. If they're upset, you have to wait until they calm down, and the listening helps with that. Apologize. Now, apologizing doesn't necessarily mean you're saying it's your fault. It seems like, here, where do we have that in here? I know I saw a slide here. It's not necessarily about saying that you're liable, but it's more around the empathy side. Sorry you've been through it. Sorry you're having a problem. It just helps create a rapport there. Finding common ground, that's the problem-solving side of any difficult situation. You need to see and you need to move them towards an endpoint, an outcome. And then it's really important to be clear about next steps. So this is the 7-step process on dealing with difficult situations, right? Difficult people are part of difficult situations. Take it away from the person and more into the situation, because that's what's difficult for you to manage, not making it personal in that sense.
And that can be really, really hard because it feels so personal. And you've not done this and you've not done that. And the you statements that people make, it can make you feel attacked and put you on the defensive without even trying. It is, so I can see how a process would be good, because it really is difficult when somebody is upset. And I don't like upset people. I'm not very good with other people's emotions. I'm not even good with mine. So, typical Brit here. So to have somebody being really upset is I either join in and get upset with them, or I'm like, take them away from me. No. So the remaining calm and not being defensive can be tough for some people. And if you're selling this as a nice course and you're doing it face to face over Zoom or in the room, you can get people to practice that, where they can have their mental shields up but not their defensive shields up. So there's lots of opportunities to add in nice parts to this course, because it's a very people focused course. Sometimes you're focusing on developing the skills. This is about the skills and the people. And if you're good with people, you're just going to love this course. It's just going to be one of these that you're going to want to teach live all of the time. Now, if you're not so good with people like me, you're going to want to hide behind your Zoom calls and record it and pop it up.
Actually, this is a really good one if you can do it live. We have it set up so that people can do their own self-reflection. There's some case studies and suggested responses and stuff in there. But if you can do it live, either in person or in something like a Zoom or Big Marker or platform where there's breakout rooms, then you can take some of these activities and have people practice. So they identify in the beginning of the course one challenging situation as an example that they'd want to deal with. and but like looking at a past one, and then they could practice that with somebody. So you can set up breakout rooms on Zoom or this other platform I signed up for called Big Marker, and then just send people off into pairs to do their practice and then bring them back again to do that kind of debrief. Because in our slides we always have that question slide and the debrief slide that, Sarah, you always delete because you're recording.
Just delete, throw it out.
Delete. But if you're doing it live, you want to have that and ask questions and then have them practice and then debrief it by having people discuss, okay, what did I learn from that? What was really difficult? What worked? What didn't work? And spend, depending on how many people you have, 10, 15 minutes debriefing that. It will add, just remember, it adds time to the course, which for a live one, it's always going to take a little bit longer because we'll have more discussion. Somebody was asking me the other day how long any of these courses are, like giving an estimate of how many hours. And I posted in the customer group my response to that. And I think I forgot to say that if you add Q&A in live, it adds that time. I'm sure you guys already understand that, but just thought I'd mention it. And Cherie, you said emotional intelligence bundle would go really well with this course. Yeah, definitely the emotional intelligence course. So you could do one of those mashups too and pull some different things out. You could have a whole curriculum with this where you have the difficult people, you have emotional intelligence. Stepping out of your comfort zone is also good, because this is kind of stepping out of your comfort zone. Depending on who your audience is, we put a couple others, I think, on sale with this course. There's one on managing remote teams, so you can transition into managing people there and using skills. What else did we put in? Overcoming sales objections. Yep. So if you have people that do have to deal with that kind of thing in sales, there'll be difficult situations there to deal with. The customer onboarding is really good too, because that prevents some of those things from happening if the difficulty is around expectations. So that's really good. Let me just skip ahead here. What else have we got? So that's a 7-step process. Some listening tips, examples of things you can say, examples of things you can say at different points. Doing some self-reflection. This is an interesting slide. This is about the progression towards rage. So if you have to deal with any situations where somebody is being really aggressive, and I think once you've been in business for a while, you always are going to have to deal with this. It's any of these situations of emotion or other difficulties. The more customers or clients you have, the more likelihood you're going to come across this. And somebody said this to me early on when I was starting my business online. I had to deal with it in the consulting field. But when I went and started my own business and went online, I thought, I'm done with that. Oh, thank God. No more difficult clients who get angry and they're offloading their difficulty from their political stuff in their corporations on me. But no, you still have to deal with it. You still get those
people. Still people.
Yeah, it's still people. And this is the sort of situations where it builds up. So it goes through irritation to mild anger to intense anger to rage. You don't want to get it to the rage point. You want to de-escalate something well before then if you can. You still have that process you can follow, but you have irritation is just an everyday part of life, a little irritation, annoyance. You don't usually have to do too much. You can deal with someone who has that pretty easily by doing that problem-solving approach. Mild anger happens when one of your goals is blocked, but there are alternatives, and you might just feel some disappointment and frustration. So that's something you can work with someone on. You get to intense anger where there's no alternative. That's really hard. So that person's level of anger, frustration gets really high. Maybe they don't see that there's an alternative. And then rage is just a complete buildup. And I know I've come close to this with some situations. Usually
not with me, I hope.
No. Not with you. With
I
you,
think sometimes,
it's usually just the irritation side, and we clear it up really quickly, and vice
oh
versa.
yes.
Because I know, again, anyone can be difficult, and I know I've been.
Mm.
All you need to do is tell me, though, and I'm, oh, okay, fine. I can
I
change that.
find it in all of the years that I've been in business, from when I run pubs to right up until this day, I have only had two in the rage phase. That it's
Mhm.
been, you can normally get it at the mild anger stage. I don't recall any at the intense anger, but I have had two in a rage, and one was last year. And
Ooh.
I had to go and lay down for 2 days because the emotions from this person were so overwhelming. And no matter how I was trying to deal with the situation, it was so incredibly difficult to communicate. And it reached the point where I did not help. And I said, I'm coming off the Zoom call now for my own mental well-being. We'll find a way to resolve this where we're not at each other's throats. And I didn't hear from the person again, which didn't resolve the issue, but it was so forceful, I couldn't manage it. And the other time that that happened, I was 6 months pregnant in my pub, and a fight kicked off. And somebody hit me on the back of the head with an ashtray. So I was, my, I've explained earlier that the bar was horseshoe shaped, and I was at the top end of the
Wow.
horseshoe at the U part. So they've hit me behind, and the bar's behind me. I didn't fall down. I must have had some sort of adrenaline seeing everything kick off. And I had one bloke coming to attack me, and I held him back by his throat at the top of his neck with his shirt. So I was cutting off his air supply. And the other guy, I turned around, I went, I'll be back for you. And then I turned with the other guy and pushed him up against the wall. Now, he's taller than me. I'm only 5'2.5". And at the time, I was 6 months pregnant. And I said, you can go from my pub now. I've had enough. And he's like, arr, 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 right? And at this point, all the men in the pub have seen that I'm in trouble. I've just been whacked, and I've got a guy by his throat off the ground up against the wall. And then they intervened. They took the guy outside. They took the guy who whacked me with the ashtray outside, and he never came back to the pub again. And someone went and made me a cup of tea. And that was it. As fast as it all flared up, it was like almost like somebody had ignited gasoline. That just me just moving the other guy out of the way and saying, well, you can hit me, but I'm going to come back for you. I don't know where that come from. And I've never seen it since. But those
And
are
is that why you have your daughters doing martial arts training?
Yes, absolutely. In that pub, I have had more fights, and I'm an untrained, unskilled fighter, than ever possible. And I've not been hurt, if that also makes sense.
I think you're
You know,
lucky from what you just
very,
said.
very
Yeah,
lucky.
I hope
Mm.
nobody listening to this ever has to deal with that kind of situation and get into it in the first place,
Um,
because
I
that's
was in one
scary. And I
pub.
don't think our 7-step process is really going to help with
No.
that kind of situation when it gets to that.
I was in one pub, and the guy was an arm wrestler. He was a champion of Russia, and somebody accused him of cheating. And I'd actually been watching because I was really quite curious, and the guy didn't cheat. But that all kicked off, and 1 minute I'm standing leaning on the bar watching arm wrestling. Next minute I've got these two big strong blokes punching each other, and I'm somehow caught up in the middle of it saying, stop punching each other. And I didn't get hit. It's like I had some sort of bubble around me. I was very lucky, because if one of them had even gently hit me, I would have been on the floor, concussed.
Oh my God. I think that's a separate course that
Yes,
we have to
publicans and difficult
dealing with
people.
violent situations. Not difficult people, but violent people. No, we're not. I'm not promising anything from our 7-step process for that one. But the other parts, and there is, I guess, one lesson to be learned, which is about your mindset going into it. Now, having a cheery, positive mindset isn't necessarily going to help that much in that kind of situation, but your mindset with dealing in with most situations will help if you go in from the standpoint of being positive and helpful and honest and helping to resolve whatever it is, and also understanding that it's not you, that they have a whole bunch of other things going on that's causing the situation in the first place. And actually, let's see what else we had in here. Yeah, so some of these things are the things that contribute to the aggressive. Remember, we talked about situations, difficult situations, and people in general, what you think of as difficult, which is true for some people. Other things bother other people. And we talked about expectations, what customers expect of you, and how that can impact it, how you can prevent it, how your mindset needs to be, and a 7-step process. And now we're talking about the other 2 situations covered in the course, which is aggression and then tears. So the aggression side, these are some of the things that can cause it. So you have to recognize that: low self-esteem, guilt, hostility, anxiety, and feeling powerless. Those all help. There are some tips in there, like don't belittle or patronize. That'll just make things way worse and escalate it. Acknowledge the emotion, offer alternatives, and end it. End the interaction. Get out if you have to. Looking at your own feelings. What else are we looking for? These are just some tips if you're dealing with tears. So I don't want to go further into that because we are moving along here, and I want to show any other materials. So these are also some tips for dealing with situations where there's tears. So that's usually a live situation, either in a Zoom or in a store. It can be on a call where somebody breaks into tears for one reason or another. They're frustrated. So there's some tips on that. Stepping away, acknowledging, saying, sometimes you just have to be silent, let them get it out. And then this is just finishing up the course with action plans. So that was using, you can also say I demoed using some of just the graphics to walk through some of the highlights of the course if you want to do that minimum viable course using just the minimum materials. That, or the other slideshow, and the action guide, which I like to show, Sarah. So the action guide is what you will be giving people to complete all the different things in the course. And the other thing that's in this folder, which I can open up, is case study review, because there are some case studies in the course book, 4 different ones. And people, your students, look at those and think about how they'd respond. And then there's this is kind of the answer sheet, the case study review. So if I open up the action guide, and then I really do want to look at the launch bonus while we have time. Oh, before I go further, Dr. Nicole said, do you have anything related to culture, not race, but the culture of environment, like in a workplace?
I don't think we have that, but to
not
find
really.
that would be relatively easy. So if you know somebody who works in a legal organisation, they may be a paralegal, they could be a full-blown lawyer, a partner, that sort of role. Get them in to talk about the workplace culture in their legal firm. And they can do the hard work and the heavy lifting for you. You've just got to say, share with us about the environment you're in. And if somebody's new coming into this culture, what do they need to look out for? Now, I worked for a wonderful company called Reading Partnership, and they made it quite clear what the culture was. You have to wear heels. You can wear a low heel. You don't have to wear a high heel, but you will wear a heel. You will wear a scarf, and they gave you the scarf. They gave you a uniform budget, and they asked us to wear navy blue suits. They didn't care whether they were skirt suits or trouser suits. And then they told us how they would like us to behave in their culture. And from what we wore to how we behaved in the workplace, it was absolutely clear. And I really liked that because I knew precisely what was expected of me. That if I walked in a black trouser suit, people would look at me funny. If I walked in a t-shirt underneath my suit, that was acceptable so long as I had my scarf on. If I didn't have my scarf on, I should go home for the day. So it's quite easy to get the information related to a workplace culture if you can find somebody in the specific workplace that you're looking to talk to or talk about. And yeah, you can even find that's usually a HR person, and they are so easy to get on a call. Now I've said that, it's going to be doctor, it's going to be really hard for you now I've said that. I've just cursed it. But there's lots of HR people on LinkedIn that you can interact with and get them to do an interview and talk about the things that you're wanting to add to your course. Moni Renee, hello.
People
Yes.
need a reason to stay. Leaders need help. Yeah. There's leadership skills is a different thing. We have something on managing remote teams, which also talks about some of the environment. If we're talking about specifically with managing teams, that's a little bit different because this is about specifically about dealing with difficult people and difficult situations. But you could certainly add in stuff, especially in this section where we talk about in any interaction, there's a balance, you, them, environment, situation. So you can talk about in the environment, you could actually expand a bit on that, some of the things that can cause it. So you can completely expand that section and talk about other elements in an environment that would make a difficult situation. And then where it's the situation, it's the actual reason. Yeah. Yeah. So that could expand it. And you can add things on leadership skills if you're talking just on that kind of thing. You can expand into managing teams. There's so many ways that you can expand this course and fit it into some other type of curriculum. So let me close that up again. So I was looking at the action guide. So just to show you quickly what they do, scrolling through. So they do look at situations they find difficult, look at why, look at patterns. So these are all things people are going to be doing a lot of self-reflection on in the course. And they will pick one in particular and all the details, and that they'll work on in the course. And the course does focus mostly on customers, but you can apply that same process and the same concepts and mindset and everything to any situation, any difficult person. So they go through that and all the details, and then they look at managing it. So the first one is around expectations, what customers expect from you. So you could tweak that to be what your team members expect from you in your team or your employees. And do they get this? So that would help you sort out that kind of situation. So now I'm just talking about customization options here and where you could do that based on those questions. And craft a statement of intent can be around how you're managing your team. So there's a great way to customize the course this way. And then going through the steps of the managing a difficult situation, you could do examples that are with a team member, an employee, and then a script, and then the extreme emotions. There are the case studies. So let me show you, there are a couple case studies. They look at the case study in the course book and how they would react. And then what you will give them as a handout in there is the case study review. Okay, I'm just opening that up. So in here, there's the case study, which is also in the course book. So they work from their course book. And then there's a suggested resolution. So they can compare what they said in their action guide, compare it to the suggestion and how it's different. So this is really good as part of the course to have them doing more.
Yeah, I really like this. I see this as a really valuable, whether you're doing it face to face or live over Zoom or letting somebody get on with it themselves. I think that's really good because it's a different way of testing their knowledge and their understanding of the skills that they're learning.
Yep. And this you can do in person or have it to be self-reflection, have people discuss it afterwards, fill this in, and then have a debrief. Have, if you're doing it more asynchronous, where people are doing it on their own, you can have a Q&A session, a live Q&A afterwards where they discuss things like this. So there are 4 case studies in here, 2 that are on aggression and 2 that are on tears. And then for the other section where they're doing that 7-step process, they use their own situation and think about that. All right. So that is that. I'm not going to go through any more of the course materials, the main course.
We need the bonus, Sharon.
Yeah, we need to talk about
You've teased us all cool about this bonus. Now we need to see it.
So, we like to do a little launch bonus that's just in the first few days, that just when we release it, that first week of the launch. And for this one, we have an assessment. This is a self-assessment on difficult people, on yourself, obviously. It's in a Word doc and in an interactive one with a worksheet. But let me open up the Word document. Open. So self-assessment. We all face difficult situations, but do you know yourself? So this is going to help and see where you need to develop some skills for dealing with difficult situations. Things like positive attitude, being honest, knowing how to manage your own anger. So this is looking at how you deal with difficult situations and how you might be a difficult person at times, because this works 2 ways. So why I react the way I do, listening, all the different skills you need for dealing with a difficult situation or difficult people. So that you can see there's a number of different things there. You score them, and then there's a score key, how you ranked, and then there's a planning worksheet, a place to plan at the end. So that is also in an interactive, we love to do that, in a spreadsheet that self-scores, and then they have the document for the worksheet and score afterwards. So let me open up this, and hopefully it will open up on the screen. Let me make this bigger for you. So you can see this is the same thing where they can check things off, right? And hopefully these aren't my answers for everything, but it adds the score automatically. And then at the bottom, I won't fill them all in, there are 20 different questions. I had a grade of 14 because I didn't check them off. But then it shows different things in here. And you would just customize this, because you can use this as a lead magnet. So there's a place in here for you to say, opt in for the free blank and get 1 step closer to perfection, or come up with an action plan, blah, I have a free report. So you don't have to have those in there. You don't have to have a call to action. You could just go in and delete those. But if you decide to use this as a lead magnet, then, or some sort of way to get people into a free strategy call, if you're working one-on-one, say you're a business coach or life coach and you want to set up a free strategy call, you can use this assessment to have people see where they are and then book a call with you. So it's a good qualifier and also gives you information before you would have that call. So that's another idea.
Yeah, I really like that, the call to actions there, because sometimes we forget that we're businesses, and just a little example there, oh yeah, I can use this and I can do that. So I like that.
And there's that little worksheet to go with it. So you could, just brainstorming again on this, you could use this if you were using it as a lead magnet and have them answer some questions and add a few more questions here to pre-qualify them before you hop on a call with them. So just another idea that they would then have to submit. So you could put it into a Google form, for instance. And is there anything else I have to show you? Because we are already almost at our time. Let me see what other questions we have. And he said, thank you both so much for sharing so many suggestions, expands our creativity and perspective offerings. Great. I'm so glad. Hopefully it doesn't overwhelm as well, because when we give too many ideas, a lot of people go, oh, wait, but which one should I use? I don't know. Just pick whichever is most comfortable and fits the best with your audience. And if you get stuck, go for the minimum, and then you can always add on. Like we have one customer who always says she gets a course and she picks one piece, just one little piece that she can use immediately, and then starts planning out from there. Dr. D. Nicole says, thanks, I really need help in this area. Could use help on detoxing a toxic workplace culture. I can see some of the things I can use, but I'm so new at using Content Sparks.
Well, if you need any help, do tag us in the group, and we can tag other people and brainstorm with you. And Content Sparks stuff, I say this now as a customer and not as a member of Team Content Sparks, is amazing. It all slots in nicely together like a jigsaw, and you can take bits out of, like Shari mentioned earlier, the emotional intelligence. You can take things out of onboarding, and there's so many, and you can just put them together and make something that's really unique to you and to your style. And for me, that's the most wonderful thing about the Content Sparks one, that we can all have this program, that all of us deliver something that's unique to ourselves. And, you know, Nettie's got years of coaching experience, so she brings that. I've got years of retail running pubs, so I could actually deal with difficult customers and aim it at publicans who are surrounded by them, you know. And there's lots of ways we can all share some of our experiences, even the times when we've been difficult ourselves and how we've felt afterwards, really humanizing the whole difficult people, because one person is perfectly normal in the moment and then something happens and they become difficult. Yet they weren't like that 5 minutes ago, and they won't be like that 30 minutes in the future. It's you've just caught them in their difficult moment, just like people catch you. So this is a really wonderful course to help people realize they're working with human beings and we're not perfect.
And just to add on, with this particular question, it's Dr. D. Nicole, I assume. Tell me if I'm wrong. With detoxing a toxic workplace culture, now this is about dealing with difficult people, this course, but I just want to point out, with a situation like that, you want to examine yourself, what are the elements that contribute to a toxic workplace culture? And then what are the skills that the people involved need? And that's how you put together some sort of training program on that. So it might have to do one on a piece from the difficult people course, like the process or the aggression, or just, one module, or just the understanding what you find difficult. Might need another module on management skills and managing a team or coaching a team. Or you can look at, I can't remember offhand what the elements are in the managing remote teams, but there might be stuff in there. So you need to look at who your audience is and what is contributing to that. It could be something around the values. So we have that course on values to profit, around identifying your core values. So that might be an element that starts it, knowing what your values are and defining those really clearly and making sure everyone in the workplace knows those values, hiring people who have those values. All those sorts of things contribute. So you want to pick and choose what makes sense for your audience, and then you're going to have a unique program. But you don't have to do it all at once. You can start with that one piece. Like if you know that just, brainstorming, if you know that them not having core values is one of the most important things they can do right away, then you could do a little program just on that, or a webinar. So I just going off on a tangent there, but I wanted to point that out, that you can mix and match as well. Okay. Here's a little networking here. I can call if you would like to reach out. So contact Nettie If you are in the customer group, Nettie, I'm pretty sure you're in our customer group already. I hope so. Then you can connect there by just private messaging. All right. Don't necessarily post in the group. You can PM each other and see if that would help. Now, a lot of our customers have made some great connections with each other and networked and good relationships where you help each other. So you should definitely do that and reach out. All right. So like I said, I'm so glad you did too. Definitely. The VIP group, the VIP Live, VIP Challenge, we actually had closed that a little while ago, but make sure you're a member in the customer mastermind group. So just that, it's just contentsparks.com/groups facebook.com/groups/contentsparks. That's our customer group. Hopefully that's easy enough to remember, and then you can post in there. Yeah, actually, can you just type that in, Sarah? All right. Or I can do that. You're doing it. Okay, so Sarah's going to type in, it's just if you go into facebook.com/groups/contentsparks, you'll find us and you can request. Oh, you're in there. Okay, you said you're in there. All right. I think that's everything for today. We're at our hour mark, which is the time we usually set. So there's the URL. Make sure you can drop any other questions in, and we'll be on the lookout for that. And you can also tag us. But go over to contentsparks.com/difficultpeople, which will look like this when you get there. It is on sale right now. You might notice that our prices for these courses went up with inflation to $177, but we kept the launch price the same. So it's over 60% off. So when you get it during the launch, you get the same price as you always do. All right. And there's all the details in there, a little more information. And then once you add that to your cart, you'll also end up at a suggestions page, which has our usual expansion pack that has module quizzes and sales page copy and bonus and some other stuff in there. So that is everything. All right. And there we go.
And that looks a really exciting one to be teaching, because you can just help so many people with that.
Yep, including yourself. And Sarah, I'm going to try really hard not to be difficult.
And I'm not going to try really hard not to be difficult, because I'm sweet as sugar and spice.
Oh, always, always.
That's
tell
it.
me when I'm being difficult, and I will either change or not.
I'm going to be mandatory enrolled into the Content Sparks difficult person training now.
Hey, I was a consultant where I had to work with clients all the time. So as a client, tend to be a little bit more sensitive to it, but I still forget. And then I remind myself what it was like on the other end. So, happy to hear. All right, guys, we're gonna sign off now, and check that out and let us know if you have any questions at all. Have a great day. Take care.